So I was talking to my creative director for the deeper dives on the main channel, basically the guy that helps me create the scripts and create the narratives for each fights and each segments. And he talked to me. He was like, I think the narratives or the story behind the Adesanya fight against Cannonier is that this fight can propulse him into GOAT status and GOAT ventures, into the GOAT discussions, and I kind of just, in the moment, I'm just like, yeah, that makes sense. Let's write about that. But now that I rethink about it, it like kind of reminds me a lot of the Kamaru Usman and George St. Pierre discussions, or Khabib, George St. Pierre discussions. I feel like every time there's a great fighter, he's always compared to the absolute greatest in the moment, because we're all a bit, recency biased. This whole thing is real, right? We're all, we see something great in the moment. It's almost like I was ready to declare Charles Oliveira the greatest lightweight on planet Earth and the greatest lightweight of all time, at UFC 274. I swear to God I was. You would have asked me that on May 9th, I think that fight was. I would have told you, Khabib doesn't hold a candle against a candle. Is that the expression? Doesn't hold I don't know. But yeah, Khabib would get destroyed by Charles Oliveira. I would have told you that confidently, but now, no, I probably wouldn't tell you that confidently. It's just, how it works. We see something amazing and we tend to see that moment and put it way bigger than it actually is, because, as real as it gets, the history books is much, much, much bigger than we realize. And each of these moments have happened over and over and over and over again for other guys. We've just haven't witnessed it, and if we haven't witnessed it, it's difficult to defend it and to argue about it. So that's why even like George St. Pierre, I'm from Montreal. I haven't watched a single fight of his. I don't think I have. Even the Michael Bisping fan, I wasn't a UFC supporter at the time. I think I never watched him fight, but I would argue that he's the greatest. Why would I argue that if I haven't even watched him fight? Isn't it fucking weird? So that's why the GOAT discussions are almost endless talks. We used to have debates in the NBA. The same reason it's like Michael Jordan or LeBron James. That discussion will live on forever. It's never going to end. But every single time that LeBron James win the championship, like when he won in 2016 or when he won in 2020 with the Lakers, it's immediately like a vast majority of people think that LeBron should be the GOAT, and then a few months goes by, a few years goes by, other teams win the championship, and then it's back to Michael Jordan. You get my point. So to come back to Adesanya, it's like, yes, he's great. Yes, he's one of the best fighters in the world right now, and he can definitely create a legacy for himself. But I don't think we can, and I don't think it's fair to determine someone as a GOAT when they're still in their career, they're still in their prime, they're still fighting, because we don't know where it'll be, and we don't know also like how the legacy will affect and influence the public. So I think that's also one component that is important into a GOAT, one of the greatest of all time, because their influence was very big on the public, on the audience. And I think that's why even, a few years after George St. Pierre's retired, we still consider him as one of the greatest. There's nothing but respect on his name. And I can talk about John Jones for the people that think John Jones might be the greatest, whatever. I personally think it's George St. Pierre just because of his career and legacy. But that's a discussion for another day. I think, look at Michael Jordan. He's been out of the game for 20, 25 years, and he's still considered the greatest of all time in the sport. Those are like very, very true statement, where if your legacy is able to live on even after you're gone, even after you're not in the sport anymore, that's where you can actually be considered one of the greatest of all time. How did your career affect other people? How did your career affect the sport? So these things can only be understood when you're gone. If you're still in the game, we don't have the same answers. So I see Dana White. That's the other thing. Like, Dana White is a promoter. I'm kind of confused. Like, you know what? I'm not even gonna ask questions, because the UFC is an amazing company, but Dana White is trying to promote the fight in such weird ways sometimes that you see he's kind of bullshitting, but he's still going to say some dumb shit just to make you hype. But you clearly can see he's just want to get you to pay for some stuff, pay for the pay-per-views and stuff. But regardless, that's his job. I kind of think there should be like the UFC president and then promoters that works for the company. Not the president that promotes it like a fucking kind of says some dumbass shit. Like when he talked about Kamaru Usman being the greatest welterweight of all time, like when he fought, I think he fought, who was it? It was Gilbert Burns or Tyron Woodley early on. Now, I mean, you can make a debate, you can argue it, but most people would probably lose if you look at the stats, if you look at title defenses, if you look at all of it, longevity and everything, years of being a champion, you would definitely lose the argument that Kamaru Usman is the greatest of all time. But saying it like a few years back was even more ridiculous. But you see Dana White saying things like Kamaru Usman is the greatest of all time when he's in the game. You're trying to promote that fighter, so you're going to say that he's the greatest. Watch him while you can. Pay that pay-per-view while you can. He's still there. He's the greatest of all time. Don't think about George St. Pierre. It's Kamaru Usman time. He's the greatest welterweight of all time. So while they're in the game, everybody is putting them on the pedestal. And I'm kind of predicting the same thing happening this weekend. If Adesanya wins, you're going to see Dana White saying the same shit, that probably Israel Adesanya is the greatest of all time over Anderson Silva at middleweight or whatever the case may be. I just find it funny. It's kind of weird. You hear Dana White saying everybody's the greatest of all time. I feel like I've heard him say George St. Pierre was the greatest of all time. I've heard him say John Jones was the greatest fighter of all time. I've heard him say Anderson Silva was the greatest fighter of all time. I feel like if it fits his narrative, he's gonna say that whoever's in front of it, whatever fits his narrative, he's gonna say that he's the greatest of all time. So that GOAT conversation will not go anywhere. I just think that we need to have discussions of the greatest of today, the greatest of right now for fighters that are still in the game. And then the GOAT conversation can be about the legends of the sport, the people that left the sport, that made their mark on the game, because that's where you can actually see the influence of each fighter on the game.